Good morning, and welcome to the April 2nd, 2019 meeting of the Pima County Board of Supervisors. Roll call, please.
Supervisor Bronson? Here. Supervisor Christie?
Here.
Supervisor Miller?
Here.
Supervisor Valadez?
Present.
Chairman Elias?
Presente, I'm present.
Let the record reflect that all members are present.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to exercise a moment of personal privilege to discuss several items that have transpired today and over the last couple weeks. Number one, me and Steve are wearing almost the same suit, so please make note of that and the difference between the two of us. My colleague, Allie Miller, hurt her foot defending the Pima County Board of Supervisors from somebody who was disparaging us, and we hope she gets better. What are y'all laughing at? We hope she gets better quickly. On a more serious note, Tom Epperson, who was a great Tucsonan, great businessman here in Tucson, passed away a couple weeks ago. He owned a used car lot right close to where I used to live when I was a little kid, named Clyde Wansley Auto Sales. And they had possibly the best, slogan for their company of anyone I've ever seen on earth. They were called Ugly But Honest. And we were never sure if that was about Tom or if that was about the cars that he sold. But he sold great cars, and he was a good friend, and I bought 4 or 5 of them from him. But actually, the funniest story was when the first time I went in with my wife when I married her. Tom looked at Emily, and I said, "This is my wife, Tom." He said, "What's your maiden name?" She said, "Veldy." He said, 1967 bright orange Country Squire station wagon. Emily looked at him and said, "I hated that car." That was him. Great man. And then also, I wanted to note the passing of another fine gentleman from here in Tucson whose name was Bobby Benton. And Bobby was a great singer, a great performer, a great composer as well. And he performed so many times for so many events for free out of the love in his heart for this place that we live. I'll always, in particular, remember him performing again for free at the dedication of the Lorraine Lee Hidden Valley Trail opening. And he played some beautiful songs in honor of Lorraine that morning. And he also played at the opening of the Dick Genzer Trail over in the Star Pass area. And that morning he sang a particularly beautiful song in Yaqui about hunting a deer and cooking it out in the desert. And that was Bobby. He had a beautiful sense of this place that we live. He was a great friend and a great man, and a member of Los Descendientes del Presidio for many years. Someone who gave a lot to our community in a very generous way all the time. So I wanted to remember Bobby as well. And then, of course, we have to note the passing of Don Diamond. Mr. Diamond lived his life here for a long time after attending the University of Arizona and found great success in life. Don was also very generous in so many ways, but in particular, we should note that the Diamond Ventures, the Diamond Children's Hospital, I should say, over at the university was a particularly generous donation that he made. And I remember when it happened, it was a very kind thing to do, but about a week later, a friend of mine, Cam Juarez, his child needed heart surgery, and Julian's surgery was successful, in large part because the Diamonds had donated money to bring in a child cardiac surgeon who could do that work on Julian and save his life. And so it's always best to be thankful and be respectful of those who pass. So I wanted to make special mention of that. I also wanted to wish everybody a happy Cesar Chavez birthday, which was observed on Sunday. The greatest Arizonan who ever lived. So with that, I believe Supervisor Christie wanted to have a moment of personal privilege as well. Please proceed.
Mr. Chairman, you really covered all the major areas. In particular, one that I wanted to highlight, you did it on your own. So at this particular point, I won't need that personal privilege, and thank you for your remembrances.
Anybody else? Supervisor Bronson, please.
Just want to make note of the fact that this is equal pay day. It's for women.
There you go.
We still are earning only 80 cents to the dollar for men, but back when this started, I think we were like in the 40-cent range. So we're improving, but we're not 100%.
Very good. Thank you very much. Now, we have Pastor Larry Mungia here from the Sober Project. And Pastor Larry's going to offer the invocation, and he's always so generous with his time. And I have great respect for him and the work that he does with his congregation. But I want everyone to know we went to South Point together. He was my tutor in Spanish, and I got a C. But I love my brother very much. Please rise for the invocation.
Of the Pima County Board of Supervisors, would you all please stand up? It's good to see y'all. You know I love you. It's been a while since you let me come back, and there's a reason for that. But
Okay, Supervisor Brunson, you're going to lead the pledge after Larry completes his, or Pastor Larry completes his.
then that's the funny part, isn't it, Richard?
Yeah, it is.
Because if you go down to it, where we went down and where we come from, and for you to standing there, looking at me and calling me Pastor Larry, whoa. There's been a lot of water under the Santa Cruz River since then, brother.
I think you're right, Larry.
And that's also the proof that there is a God. So look, I want to invite each and every one of you before we get into this. Come down. I've been working with the Gospel Rescue Mission. We're down there at the Center of Opportunity. You guys know all about it. They're rebuilding the Holodome for a one-stop, 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week emergency for homeless help. They're turning that into low-income housing. They're turning it into a one-stop place where they can get IDs and showers, and their pets will be taken care of. This has been a dream of a lot of the faith components in Pima County. We've been wanting this for a long time. You've seen what Lisa Chastain has done yearly with the Hope Fest. Well, her and Roy Tallgren now together at the Gospel Rescue Mission will make that happen every single day. So come down, take a tour. See what we're doing. Sober Project's neck deep in it with them. We're doing recovery. We're doing meetings. And we also have a radio program we're doing out of there live now. Go check it out. God's working in this city and in this county. You guys ready to do this?
Yep.
Bow your heads if you're so inclined. Lord, we thank you for this day. And you know, man, I'm just asking you to do one cool thing. I ask you to bless these men and women in this council, that you have put them in those seats. It was you, Lord, that set this whole thing up in motion. And I know that you will never let anything start without it being completely to your liking. So, Lord, I ask you to be an influence. I ask you that they would lean on you and lean in on you, and that you would speak wisdom, knowledge, and truth into their lives, into their hearts. And from that seat that they sit in, they would govern this incredible county, the oldest living county in the nation. People have been hanging out here for a long time. So, Lord, we ask you, as we hang out here, you hang out with us, and you are truly the God of the county. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor Larry. Beautiful thoughts this morning. Very good. We are going to do pause for pause first, and we have some kitties here today, right? How sweet.
Good morning, members of the
They would
board.
look really good at the home of a Flowing Wells cheerleader.
Possibly, yeah.
Just a thought
Yeah.
I'm having, you know.
I mean, pretty dang cute, right? So this little sleepy burrito is Figaro, he is spoken for, but like someone mentioned back here, we are in kitten season, so we are about to have a lot of kittens come into the shelter. So if you've ever thought about having a cat, now's the perfect time. And the shelter is also offering a special adoption promotion for the month of April. We have volunteer picks. So volunteers at the shelter are picking out their favorite shelter pets for pets 4 months and older, and the fees will be waived for those pets. There is a $19 licensing fee for dogs, but it's a good time if you're thinking about any pets, not just kittens. But if you can't adopt, consider fostering. This cat has been fostered and is very, very sweet and very socialized, so if you consider that as well. We're always looking for fosters and volunteers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very good. We have some changes to today's agenda. Well, just one change. On page 1 of the addendum, item 5, resolution regarding the Community Law Enforcement Partnership Commission, resolution 2019-24. Supervisor Christie has requested this item be removed from the agenda, so it will not be heard today. And thank you. And hearing no objections, those will be the changes to today's agenda. We are moving right along here, and the next thing we have is a presentation by Supervisor Bronson in honor of the Flowing Wells High School cheer team. And we're so glad to have you all here today, so excited and hopeful that you'll adopt a kitty and talk to your parents first. I'm just making suggestions. You know, so Supervisor Bronson, do we need a motion to approve the item? It's just a presentation. I don't think we do. Please, thank you, Supervisor. Yeah, come on forward, all of you. Look at that. We're so glad. Give them a nice round of applause. Come on around on both sides. Come on, come on. What a great looking bunch, huh?
And we're really pleased to have them here. Given our college sport, well, we got the ladies are still in the Final Four, our basketball, but we've got some national champions right here, and that's the Flowing Wells High School cheer team. They took the championship this year, and I'm going to read the certificate of recognition. District 3 Supervisor Sharon Bronson, the Pima County Board of Supervisors, and County Administrator Chuck Huckleberry, who is actually a Flowing Wells grad, present this document to the Flowing Wells High School cheer team in recognition of their first place finish at the Aloha Spirit National Championship. The Flowing Wells High School cheer team, coached by Kelsey Phillips and Danielle Duran, is made up of 24 hardworking students who have been practicing more than 15 hours a week since last May. Aside from cheering on and supporting the athletic teams at their school, they also attend multiple competitions throughout the year, showcasing their talents and competing with teams at both the state and national level. On March 9th, they attended the Aloha Spirit National Championship in Honolulu, a competition featuring teams from around the globe. The Flowing Wells cheer team competed in the Level 4 Senior Co-ed 10 to 18-year-old division against teams that have one or more male cheerleaders and came out victorious, winning first place in their division. On behalf of the people of Pima County and the residents of District 3, and especially the community of Flowing Wells, we offer our sincere congratulations to your outstanding work ethic, your performance cheering on the teams of Flowing Wells High School. Congratulations, well done. And we've got 3 other people that need to be up here. Come on, you 3. Oh, no. Are we going to get a cheer? Can we get a little? They're not going to do their flips. So. This is Superintendent Baker. We have a member of the school board. Why don't you, introduce your your.
So this is Mr. Pat Weber, our athletic director, Mr. Jerry Long, former school board member, longtime supporter of the community.
Well, and he's been at least 20 years supporting this team. Is that not correct? All right. Well, again, congratulations, and we're going to have, I think you, as the captain, you want to say a few words and tell us about your team?
Yeah, I think something that I find really unique about the Flowing Walls cheer team is that none of us really feel separated by age or experience or grade. When it really comes down to it, we're all willing to work together despite our differences or the age and grade, because we have everywhere from freshmen to seniors. We all work really well together, and I think that's something, as someone who's been on the team for 4 years, that I really like to see, is that regardless of anything, we're always willing to work hard and work towards our goal of a national championship in the end. If I could go next to any of these people on the team and be able to carry out a conversation and feel comfortable with all of them, talking to any of them. So I've just grown a really close bond with them, and I really appreciate being on a team and having been their captain for this season. Thank you.
So something about these kids that, aside from the national championship, something that I think is really special about them is not only do they cheer on at all football games, all basketball games, pep assemblies and things like that, but this team specifically made it a priority to kind of get out in the community and do things to bring a little bit of spirit, not only to Flowing Wells, but to everywhere we could be. So they did a lot of walks for charity, an MS run, things like that. One of our favorite competitions throughout the year is called the Cheer for Charity competition. It's up in Phoenix. And we're the only team from Tucson that ever goes, but every school goes and represents a charity. For the last 5 years, we've represented Youth on Their Own because they've helped a lot of people from our school. And so we've been able to, when we go to this charity, the winning team gets a donation to the charity of their choice. And 3 out of the last 5 years, they've been able to come out on top and be able to donate some money back to Youth on Their Own. So I think that aside from bringing spirit and support to our school, I think something about these kids is that they try and do it to all of Pima County and Tucson.
Well, again, congratulations, and we're going to get a little photo. Yeah, go ahead.
Before we leave, we wanted to thank you for everything that you do for the Flowing Walls community, and we wanted to present you with this for your office. Of course.
This is your day, not mine. This is your day to shine. And if we can't get a little cheer out of you.
Out of the team, yeah. Would you like to do the one out of the team?
Yeah.
All right.
What cheer should we do?
You guys want to do the fight song?
Yeah.
All right, spread out.
That's great. Hey. Well, thank you very much for coming here today, and I second you in thanking Supervisor Bronson for all the work she does in the Flowing Wells community, because it's very important to her and to all of us as well. So thank you, Sharon. And I wasn't just kidding about the kitty. You can. They're leaving. You don't want the cat? That's all right. I want to keep pitching you guys, you know. Okay, our next present proclamation actually is for the National Day of Prayer, going to be offered by Supervisor Valadez to Lois Bly and Catherine Mark. Would you please come forward, and I move the item. Motion and a second. Discussion? Objections? Hearing none. Motion carries. Larry, you want to come up too? I know you. Well, never mind.
You remember the days I used to drag you down to the plaza at
Well,
noon
yes,
on the National Day of Prayer.
I do remember that, Larry.
I do, and that's where we all became such good friends.
One of the places.
And the
Love you
suits
too, brother.
must have been a sale on that.
It wasn't. It was a good sale, brother. He got us good, didn't he, Molly?
It's a pleasure to do this again with you all. And Larry, why don't you get a little closer?
This is their time. I'm just the old OG.
It's funny, I invited you to get closer to me, and you went with them. You are.
Smart man.
All right. Whereas 2019 is the 69th observance of the National Day of Prayer, and the theme this year is Love One Another, John 13:34. And whereas a National Day of Prayer has been part of our national heritage since it was declared by the First Continental Congress in 1775, and whereas the United States Congress in 1952 approved a joint resolution stating the President shall set aside and proclaim a suitable day each year other than a Sunday as a national day of prayer on which the people of the United States may turn to God in prayer and meditation at churches, in groups, and as individuals. And whereas the U.S. Congress in 1988, by Public Law 100-307, established an act to provide for setting aside the first Thursday in May as the date on which the National Day of Prayer is celebrated, and whereas leaders and citizens of our communities, cities, states, and nation are afforded the privilege of prayer with the joy of seeking divine guidance, strength, protection, and comfort from Almighty God, and whereas, recognizing the love of God, we citizens of Pima County treasure the freedom to gather in prayer, exercising reliance on God's power in the face of present challenges and threats, asking for His blessing on every individual in our country. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Pima County Board of Supervisors hereby proclaims Thursday, May 2nd, 2019, to be National Day of Prayer, passed and adopted the second day of April 2019.
Thank you so much.
So thank you.
Thank you, Ramon and Board of Supervisors. This means so much. You know, as a state coordinator for the National Day of Prayer, our passion and our vision is to see National Day of Prayer events all over, not only our county, our city, Ramon, but over the entire state. Most of you in here realize the urgency of prayer in this day and this culture that we're living in. I ask you to join us, to put down your differences and join us on the National Day of Prayer, May 2nd. We try to have locations throughout the city, the county. You can go on our Arizona website and check and see if there is an event in your area. Let's humble ourselves before a living God and see what He can do for our nation. Amen.
Yeah, you forgot the picture, Ramon.
You guys, I gotta go. Much love. Come see us down there. Thank you guys. Bye.
Thank you, Pastor. Have a great day. Yep.
Underestimate your best.
Okay. Our last presentation is about Distracted Driving Awareness Month in Pima County. And we have Brendan Lyons here, who's been like a lion working on the issue for several years, and Susan Kincaid and Deborah Breslin. I'm going to make the presentation myself. I'm going to move the item. Motion and a second. Discussion. Objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Please come forward. Distracted driving, very big issue, and we've had so much trouble over the last few years putting together ordinances at the state level, and local level, and county level, and not to speak of the national level. And it seems strange, because one of my greatest fears is injuring somebody who has no blame or anything assigned to them. And so just the fact that that could happen is something that we can prevent. And we can help prevent that by not being distracted when we're driving. And of course, we think about, these things because we all got them. But that's only part of distracted driving. There's more to it. And so we need to think about all the different things that distract us as we drive down the road. In an effort to try and make everybody safer out there. Because if you just think about driving unto itself, it's kind of crazy. You're in this big metal can thing, going as fast as you can down the road and trusting that everybody else around you is going to do the right thing. But we grow accustomed to it, and we do it every day. Most of us do it every day. Or we ride public transportation, which is even a stranger concept if you really get down and think about it. So I just ask you to be thoughtful. Think about these people here that have worked so hard on this issue and care so much, and have personal stories that relate to others that have been injured or are no longer with us. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and read this proclamation. Whereas distracted driving is an activity of a driver or of a motor vehicle that diverts the driver's attention from the primary task at the time of operating a motor vehicle. And whereas distracted driving is not associated with an age group, level education, driver demographic, or social status. And whereas Arizona motor vehicle crash data statewide for 2017 shows that about 100 people that year were killed as a result of distracted driver behavior. Whereas distracted driving is a completely preventable health issue. Whereas the best way to end distracted driving is to educate all Arizona drivers about the types of distracted driving and the very serious dangers they pose. Now therefore be it resolved that the Pima County Board of Supervisors hereby proclaims the month of April 2019 to be Distracted Driving Awareness Month in Pima County, passed and adopted this second day of April 2019. Would you please give them a nice round of applause for all their work. Please, you want to make some comments?
It's kind of hard to believe that it's been maybe 4 years since we first came knocking at your door, Brendan and myself and a few other people, to start the ball rolling to get an ordinance passed here in Pima County. We went to your offices, talked to you, and by 2017, we had a primary law, which was great. Now 26 communities throughout the state have an ordinance related to distracted driving. Hopefully this year will be the year that we finally become part of the 48 other states who have a distracted driving law. So thank you so much for your support, and we're going to keep on keeping on. So thank you.
One year, 4 months ago, and 23 days and hours, my husband passed away by a distracted driver. And though I know we can't change the past, in this room and outside of this room, we can make a difference. I am honored to be able to recognize him and many others who have lost loved ones. And I thank you for having us here. Thank you so much for making a difference in our lives as we try to change the future and just be more aware of what we can do to help out. Thank you so much.
Chairman, Supervisors, it is an absolute honor and privilege to be standing before you. As you know, 6 years ago, on my day off as a firefighter, I went out for a bike ride on the morning of my girlfriend's birthday. Distracted motorist at 45 miles an hour took his eyes off the road, looked down to see who was calling, drifted in the bike lane, and struck us both from behind. I sustained 6 fractured vertebrae, fractured pelvis, traumatic brain injury, and it took me away from my career as a firefighter. And it compelled me to renew this mission to help and serve others by promoting the awareness of all who utilize our public roads. Distracted driving is defined as anything that takes your eyes off the road, your hands off the wheel, and your mind off the task of driving. Humans cannot operate a motor vehicle without doing risk to public safety while looking at a cell phone or being engaged in any other activity beyond driving. So I thank you very much, and as we follow with this National Day of Prayer, I'm thankful to be able to utilize my voice for those who no longer have one. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you again. Come on down, everybody. We could have a photo with everybody. Brendan's requested that.
Oh, I can't quite get down.
I'll kneel down.
Yeah, Allie, we can work you in. Your position nicely. Yeah,
Perfect.
yeah, that's good. Perfect? No, she's perfect. You knew I wasn't gonna leave that one alone now. Where's Supervisor Valadez?
Get him?
I'm leaving room for it.
Julie went to find him.
We'll give him a second.
There we go. There we go.
There he is. Sorry. You look good too. Well, sort of. Oh. On the other side.
Can you still see her? Can you still be able to see her? Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you all very much.
Photographer told me that wide angle lens was only for me, but now we find that it has other purposes as well. Okay, we are on to call to the audience. We have a number of speakers that have signed up to speak. I'd ask you to please refrain from using any vulgarities in the room, as has happened in the recent past. I've heard 2 cell phones go off during the course of this morning's meeting already. Please put your cell phones on silent out of respect for other people in the room. We'll go for about an hour and try and get everybody in. If we have more cards that have not been completed at the end of the hour, we will conclude call to the audience at the end of the meeting. But I thank you all for coming here and taking your time to put in these speaker cards and address the Board of Supervisors. We're going to start with Molly McCasson, and former city councilman from Ward 6, and Phil Bossenbrook. I knew that, Phil. I knew that. It was just coming out slow. I'm going to let them speak together, but they get 3 minutes apiece. So, but just to make it a little easier on our guests here, we're going to let you speak together.
Thank you very much, Chairman Elias. Good morning, supervisors, staff, and all of you, community members. It was really inspiring this morning, I have to admit. Took me back. I too was a cheerleader. Tucson High School.
Another Badger cheerleader right here, Molly.
Oh my gosh! And I just want to thank you, Chairman Elias, for your depth of community commitment. Your comments in the opening are such a reminder of what brings us here and what ties us together here and outside of this building throughout our community. So thank you so much for that reminder.
Thank you.
So we are here today representing hundreds of Pima County residents who've signed a letter to this Board of Supervisors urging you to hold a public hearing concerning the safety of a policy permitting gun shows on county property at the Pima County Community Fairgrounds. So at this moment, I want to submit these letters, and basically Phil and I are at St. Mark's Presbyterian Church together, and we occasionally gather a few signatures. So I want to submit these to you along with a letter that outlines some of our questions that we have. So I'll give these to the clerk. And thank you. We basically gathered these letters on our own over the course of maybe 6 months, just never having any problems getting signatures.
One refused.
One refused for him and maybe 3 refused for me. But basically, people are concerned about public safety and gun violence. So the residents of Pima County are aware, they're very aware, of an epidemic of gun violence around the country, which of course all of us are. They're aware that Arizona has one of the highest gun death rates in the country. In 2017, 1,134 people died because of gun violence. They're aware that what's called the gun show loophole, whereby no background checks are required in private gun sales, typically comprise 30% of all gun show sales, encourages the illegal sale of guns. They're aware that the NRA has successfully lobbied Washington to prohibit accurate figures on illegal gun sales. They're aware that our state government preempts any and all local efforts to increase gun safety in Arizona. Yet no one in this chamber, not one single soul up on the dais or in this room, would disagree that public safety is the top priority and responsibility of us as elected officials. Ensuring the freedom to gather, to study, to work, to worship, to recreate, and to shop safely.
We are here along with Moms Demand Action.
Yeah, please stand.
And stand up, please.
Go, Moms.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you. And the Pima, or St. Mark's Presbyterian Social Justice Committee and Gun Violence Prevention Arizona to request a public hearing to discern what the Board of Supervisors is doing, that the supervisors are doing everything in their power to protect public safety when it comes to gun shows. To this end, we have 7 questions.
Right. Our first question is, without universal background checks, how does the board guarantee to the public that no weapon at the fairgrounds is ever sold to a felon, a domestic abuser, someone with mental health issues, or anyone else prohibited from owning a gun?
Number 2, can the board legally allow only federal firearm licensed holders who provide a background check and a firearms transaction for every sale to participate in gun show, fairground gun shows? In the name of public safety, will you be willing to do this?
Number 3, does the board have the authority to require the registration of non-licensed persons who sell guns at the Pima County Fairgrounds? Are you willing to use this authority in the name of public safety?
Number 4, does the board have the authority to require gun show promoters to be licensed, maintaining an inventory of all firearms that are sold by FFL holders and non-licensed sellers at the gun show?
Number 5, are there on-site ATF agents at all fairground gun shows? Are there sheriff's deputies patrolling the parking lots where frequently private gun sales take place out of people's trunks? So, do we have that kind of patrolling in the parking lot as well as inside of the gun show itself to help discourage illegal gun sales? Are you willing to provide or to require an increase in such on-site security?
Number 6, how does the county receive revenue from quarterly gun shows at the fairgrounds and those tabling at the grounds? What is the percentage of overall profit? Another manner, does the board approve how this money is allocated either directly or indirectly?
And finally, well, actually, no, not finally.
Very quickly, Ms. McCassin, because you have expended your time, the 6 minutes that you
Have we spent our 6th time?
Yes, you have.
24 seconds.
But I'll let you finish up, please.
Thank you. I'll read quickly. Does the Pima County Fair Commission keep a record of the ratio between private gun sellers and federal firearm license dealers? In the name of public safety, would you be willing to keep such a record?
The board and the Pima County Fair Commission have a difficult to understand relationship. In a hypothetical case of a murder weapon being traced to an illegal sale at the Pima County Fairgrounds, who would be legally and physically responsible in a lawsuit were brought? The county, the board of supervisors, or the commission?
These questions require complete answers as they spell life and death to Pima County residents.
Thank you in advance for your attention to the serious matters. We look forward to the next few months to have a public hearing that answers the public safety concerns of the quarterly Pima County gun shows.
Thank you all so much. Thank you for letting us go on.
Appreciate your time. Okay, our next speaker is going to be Marie Fordney. Ms. Fordney, please come forward. And I was over there at Southern Arizona Child Advocacy Center yesterday for a celebration on Child Abuse Prevention Month. Thank you very much for your work and the work of your staff and your partners. It means so much to the families of Pima County and to public safety for all of us. So please, you have 3 minutes to address the board. If you would give us your name for the record.
Thank you so much. My name is Marie Fordney. I'm the Executive Director of the Southern Arizona Children's Advocacy Center, and I'm also a resident of District 1. Supervisor Miller, you are my supervisor. Thank you for serving our community. And I'm really here to thank all of you and tell you just a little bit about what we do at the Advocacy Center because you provide a portion of our funding. Our mission is to provide a safe, compassionate, healing environment for children who have been a victim or have witnessed a crime. The vast majority of our clients are children who have been abused. And they come and we provide a forensic interview and a medical exam and healing services for non-offending family members and for the child so that they can move forward and continue on. We know that traumatic experiences early in life have a strong impact later in life if they're not quickly and properly addressed. The design of the Advocacy Center is to ensure that that trauma is minimized during the investigation and that the child is connected right away to healing services. I'm coming today because, in addition to being Distracted Driver Awareness Month and Sexual Assault Awareness Month, as Chairman Elias just mentioned, he was with us yesterday to launch Child Abuse Prevention Month because we all have a responsibility to protect children, and I appreciate the role that you all take in doing that. As you are entering, I know, your budget cycle, I wanted to mention the pieces of what we do that you support. By Arizona statute, you're only required to pay for evidence collection, and so you only pay for interviews and exams that are the responsibility of Pima County. other counties pay for their own exams and interviews. And those healing services that I mentioned, the counseling and the services for the families, which sometimes are a tremendous need, those are also funded by external sources as well. So a little bit of budget information. I brought some packets that give you a lot more information about what we do. I wish I had time to share a story with you because the kids that we meet are amazing and resilient. They give their interview and have their exam, then they go into my favorite room in the whole building, which is our playroom, and they watch a movie while the detective is meeting with their family member and beginning the investigation, and you can see the stress melt off of them and they become kids again. It's my favorite place to be in the world. And when people hear what I do, they often react with sympathy and they say, oh, you must hear the most terrible things. And I do hear terrible things, but I leave the center every day filled with hope because those kids are amazing and because I know that we've had the privilege of starting them on their journey towards healing. So I thank you for your time, and I have packets. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Forney. Our next speaker is going to be Leilani Clark. Leilani, if you'd please come forward, and thank you for spending your time with us here today. Give us your name for the record, and you have 3 minutes to address the Board of Supervisors.
Okay. Hi, my name's Leilani Clark.
You have people coming up with you?
Singi tamu, biagandi, navi ungtoa kapawenge anamu, na puganine tsoint povi na Leilani Clark, yat ea bine she Leilani Clark, yanishe, tabahan nishle, nakai klajini bashichi, kapawenge dashiche, nakai klajini dashinele. We are recognizing that April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month, and this actually was a really good day to stand up for. There's a lot of red in the room right now, and we're here raising awareness for the issue of missing, murdered Indigenous women and girls. So I invite everyone wearing red, if you'd like to stand in solidarity too, just if you want to stand for this issue of missing, murdered Indigenous women and girls. According to a 2017 report by the Urban Indian Health Institute, out of 5,712 cases of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls reported in the National Crime Information Center in 2016, only 116 of those cases were logged into the Department of Justice's Federal Missing Persons database. The same 2017 report listed Arizona as the third highest ranking state and Tucson as the fourth highest ranking city in the country with the most cases of missing, murdered Indigenous women and girls. Staggering statistics like this is what has urged Take Back the Night Tucson to place front and center the issue of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls for this year's event. I'm one of the 2019 co-chairs this year. I am also one of the statistics of 85% of women from Native tribes in Arizona who will have faced violence in their lifetime, and we are just here to cordially invite you to our event. Take Back the Night Tucson is an annual international event raising awareness on sexual assault and empowering survivors. The city of Tucson first began this rallying cry to reclaim the night for women from sexual violence in 1979. 40 years later, we still carry that same spirit, but now with the intention to center the most impacted communities by this epidemic rate of violence. Take Back the Night Tucson recognizes we are on the traditional and ancestral lands of the Tohono Nation, whose community has lost 27 women and girls to this violence. Everyone one goes in the state, in this country, and in this hemisphere, one must recognize we are on Indigenous land. We want to embrace the recognition that we are guests on Native land and need to foster better relationships with communities most affected and who have been doing resilient anti-violence work for generations. This year's event will be held on Wednesday, April 10th at the San Javier Co-op Farm on the Tohono Nation. The event will start at 5 p.m. with the procession from the San Javier Mission to the San Javier Co-op Farm, walking in ceremony for our missing, murdered Indigenous women and girls, survivors, and supporters. You'll be able to attend a family-friendly, free community event filled with art, music, poetry, dance, food, a community resource fair, speakers, and candlelight vigil and survivor speak out. Healing and ceremony is going to be the centers of this year's event to foster an environment of support and resiliency with advocates present as well as traditional healers. Childcare will also be available. Outside of Take Back the Night, there's a lot of active work underway in the state of Arizona surrounding the issue of MMIWG. On March 11th, 2019, the Arizona House of Representatives passed HB 2570 with a 60-0 vote to create a study committee to help determine the rates of MMIWG throughout the state. And just on March 27th, they also passed the Senate Health and Human Services Committee. So with ongoing work with issues like this taking place in Arizona, we really invite all of city leaders just to come and listen, to hear from communities that are directly impacted by this issue of MMIWG within the state of Arizona, specifically the Southern Arizona community. Thank you very much. You all have a good day.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for coming down today. Appreciate it, Leilani. It's always a pleasure to see you speak. Our next speaker is going to be Brenda Wexler. Brenda, thank you for spending your time with us today. Please give us your name for the record, and you know the routine.
Brenda Wexler. I live in Pima County, and I want to talk about good community policing collaboration and bad community policing collaboration. I want to commend all of you for approving a position through the Sheriff's Department to scrub the county jails of people who are nonviolent, mentally ill, some guy who might be urinating in the park, that kind of thing. So I'm really happy to hear that. It's not a new move. It may be a new move for you guys, but that kind of good community collaboration has been going on for a long time. As a matter of fact, in Tucson, we have drug court. That's an attempt to give people a second chance. And if they're low-level drug offenders and they go through a drug rehab program that's been approved, they get their felony charges or prison charges expunged. That's what makes for a good community. But as you see, I'm wearing the Stop the Bad collaboration. And you guys have, or at least some of you have rejected the Stone Garden funds in the past. And I don't think that our community has been more at risk because of that. And I thought it was really courageous, because it takes really courageous people to reject those kinds of funds that I think are pernicious and really bad for the community. How could one community member be pitted against another member, be a good thing and turn people in? So I'm asking you once again to please reject Stone Garden funds. Thank you for listening today.
Thank you, Ms. Wexler. Our next speaker is going to be Kristen Randall. Kristen, please come forward. Thank you so much for spending your time here with us once again, and for your work on the CLEPSI Commission. You guys are doing a great job.
I not only spend my time here, I spend my my vacation leave. Good morning, supervisors. My name is Kristen Randall, and yes, I'm wearing a Star Wars shirt for somebody. I just want to say that as I dig into some of the data concerning Stone Garden, I have many concerns, and not all of them are going to fit into 3 minutes, so I'm going to focus on one of them. There's a packet in front of you, and I'm going to describe it. A few weeks ago, I sent in a request for data from the Pima County Sheriff's Department, and I received a response. The first page there is a response. There's some highlighted areas there. Most of the data that I requested from the sheriff I was told that we have previously not captured this information. If you go to page 2, you will see a copy of the Stone Garden Daily Activity Report where they captured that information. So I asked for the number of people turned over to Border Patrol, vehicle stops and citations, total arrests, misdemeanor and felonies, and total cost per hour. Once again, if you look at your Stone Garden Daily Activity Report, all of those are fields that are captured, are sent to Border Patrol, and are also saved onto what is called the P drive within Pima County Sheriff's Department. If you go to the last sheet of paper, this is a template. This is from, so the one on the second page, I don't think, ooh, look at that. Oh, that's nice. This is the last page is the FEMA suggested template with the same information. This is included in every grant application that is filled out with these fields. Since I've started doing this, many deputies and sergeants have reached out to me, and I've asked them questions, and they've been very honest about Stone Garden. And that's why I know some of these things. That when I've asked the Sheriff's Department for this information, they have not been transparent. They have not told me, but I've been able to just talk to community members and get this information anyway. Border Patrol requests exacting records. They want as much data as possible. And as you can see here, these data are captured, and I was told that they are not. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kristen. Our next speaker is going to be Jani Simmer. Jani, please come forward. Thank you for spending your time here once again with us, and if you could give us your name for the record, and then you know the routine.
Thank you, Supervisors, for taking the time every meeting to listen to us. My name is Jani Simner. I'm in District 5. And a couple of weeks ago, some of you might have heard the story about a family who was pulled over by our state troopers for a too dark window tint. For most of us, that sort of traffic stop would result in a warning to visit the auto shop as soon as possible to get the tint adjusted. If we were particularly unlucky, we might get a ticket or a fine. But for this family, what should have been a pretty trivial traffic stop ended with a call to Border Patrol, a 12-year-old girl spending the night alone in detention, and a father being separated from his family, which also included 2 younger children. Now, we don't know if this traffic stop was funded by Operation Stone Garden, which the Arizona Department of Public Safety continues to accept. What we do know is that such pretextual traffic stops are exactly the sort of activity Operation Stone Garden was designed to support. There are, of course, those who don't much care about the fate of undocumented members of our community, or who think what happens there doesn't count somehow. Yet every time a routine traffic stop results in a call to Border Patrol, countless other people who we never hear from become much more reluctant to contact the police for any reason. That makes all of us, documented and undocumented, far less safe. Fortunately, unlike the Department of Public Safety, Pima County currently does not accept Stone Garden funds, thanks to this board. This frees up our Sheriff's Department to focus on its mission to protect the community and helps them carry it out more effectively. Along the way, they no longer need act as agents of family separation. However, as you all probably also know, next year's Stone Garden grant will come before the board for another vote in a few weeks. For the sake of our law enforcement officers, our safety, and our community, I urge you to once again reject Stone Garden funds. And please remember, those funds cannot be used for the day-to-day business of running the Sheriff's Department, whatever has been said. Stone Garden funds are strictly allocated for providing enhanced coordination between local and federal law enforcement agencies, according to the Homeland Security Grant Department's own website. Stone Garden cannot be used to hire permanent law enforcement officers, fund routine patrols and operations, or pay for construction and repair costs. All the things that go into basic, on-the-ground, in-the-streets community policing that truly keeps our country safe, our county safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. Our next speaker is going to be Steve Diamond. Mr. Diamond, if you'd come forward, please, and give us your name for the record and tell us about your Star Wars shirt. I mean, you know the routine, I guess. 3 minutes.
I do,
help,
and I
please.
am also wearing a Star Wars t-shirt. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Steve Diamond. In 2 weeks, you may be voting on whether to accept the Operation Stone Garden grant money this year. You all already know how I feel. I feel it makes our communities less safe, by, among other things, compelling our sheriff's deputies to work as immigration officers. I know Sheriff Napier has repeatedly denied that, but as you well know, he bases that denial on a narrow definition, asserting that because the deputies aren't 287G certified, they can't possibly work as immigration officers. Well, this is utterly disingenuous when, as you also know, deputies working on Stone Garden time are literally under the direction of a Border Patrol supervisor. Besides, we're told that there are approximately 4,500 Border Patrol agents in the Tucson sector. Why do they need a few dozen more taken from the force directly responsible for the safety of Pima County's residents, that being the PCSD? And how big is that force anyway? How big is PCSD? We've been told it's between 400 and 500, 1/10 the size of the Border Patrol in the area. But is that number even accurate? Latest numbers show that PCSD has 432 authorized positions, of which 399 are filled, meaning the overall staffing level is 92%, as Sheriff Napier has said publicly. However, if we look at Patrol Division, which does most of the actual work on the streets, only 206 out of 239 positions are filled, 86%, and at least 14 more are unavailable for patrol duty for various reasons. The true availability in Patrol Division is less than 80%. Contrast that with what Sheriff Napier said on this year's Stone Garden grant application. In response to the question, is your agency fully staffed, he wrote, PCSD is sufficiently staffed to ensure all planned OPSG deployments are fully staffed. I suggest that the careful and deceptive way that response is worded, not really answering the question, coupled with the actual availability in Patrol Division, ought to be an enormous red flag for this board to consider. I urge you to consider carefully the forthcoming CLEP-C recommendation, and I urge you to question Sheriff Napier thoroughly about staffing levels before you cast your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Our next speaker is going to be Penelope Jacks. Penelope, thank you so much for being here today. It's a pleasure to see you.
Thank you for having me.
District 5 neighbor. Please give us your name for the record, and you have 3 minutes to address the Board of Supervisors.
Thanks. My name is Penelope Jacks, and I am the chair of the Strong Start Pima committee. And I have something for you. I wish I had a Star Wars t-shirt. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, thank you for having me here. I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak for the children of Pima County and for the future of our county's prosperity. The research is clear and undeniable for children and for families and for the community. Decades of studies have demonstrated that the return on investment is between $4 and $16 for every dollar spent on high-quality early education. Education and health experts, law enforcement and business people, parents and economists are all on the same page. Everyone benefits, and the biggest benefits accrue to low-income children, families, and communities. In Pima County, nearly half of our 3- and 4-year-olds live in families with incomes below 200% of the poverty level. That means below about $50,000 for a family of 4 annually. Nearly 3 out of 4 of those children are children of color, and yet fewer than 1 of 5 of them attend high-quality preschool. Pima County has the chance to make a significant impact on this problem by broadening its successful and existing partnership with Arizona's flagship program, First Things First, to expand scholarship programs for 3- and 4-year-olds to attend high-quality, full-day, full-year early childhood education. First Things First has a proven record based on extensive evaluation and a long history of working with Pima County and in other jurisdictions. No new bureaucracy would be required to put such a program in place. Pima County does many things that are not mandated by statute. We're proud of the county's work in promoting literacy, health, outdoor space, and fitness, and particularly in alleviating poverty. These are initiatives that improve our whole community's quality of life. Providing high-quality early childhood education for our most at-risk children can only enhance that quality. Our children are our collective responsibility, and their shared well-being is something we must all take on. Every community and jurisdiction that has provided for its children, especially those at risk, has enhanced its stature among its residents and its images beyond its own borders. Decision makers who lead on children's well-being are respected and rewarded by voters. Countless folks around the community understand that funding the Pima County Preschool Investment Program will be good for the county, good for kids, good for families, good for business, and many, many people will be grateful for your support in this. There's been a consistent series of letters to the editors, people I don't even know, I will say, that supporting this and urging your support for it. So let's not wait another year. It's never been the year for children. Let's make this the year for children. I urge you to include PCPIP in your budget for this coming year. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Penelope. Our next speaker is going to be Bill Burke. Bill, thank you for being here. Please come forward, and if you could give us your name for the record, and then you can address the Board of Supervisors for 3 minutes, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. My name is Bill Burke. I'm a District 1 resident, and I'm here to talk in support of the Pima County Preschool Investment Program also. Perhaps the biggest example of why we should support a preschool for young children was the captain of the Flowing Wells cheerleading squad, who I would bet went to a high-quality preschool when she was younger, how well-spoken she was. In fact, Flowing Wells has an incredibly high-quality preschool in their district. So Penelope gave you all the reasons why we should invest in preschool for our young children. And what I've been asking myself recently is why should the county do this? Why is it the county's responsibility to take money and invest in preschool for children? And the answer is because we know it makes such a difference and because we can. Pima County has the ability to do this, and it will make a huge difference in not only preparing children to be successful in kindergarten and life and beyond, right, but also in their day-to-day lives as very, very young children. So the research is very clear. Pima County has an excellent opportunity to step up and really make a difference in families' lives. And I look forward to coming to study sessions and answering your questions via emails as you look into allocating money in this year's budget. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, sir. Okay, our next speaker is going to be Sue Newhauser. There you are. Thank you for being here. Really appreciate your time, your efforts. If you would give us your name for the record, and you have 3 minutes to address the Board of Supervisors.
Thank you for having me here and listening to this very current issue. A couple of years ago, I stood in this room while this very Board of Supervisors was the very first county board to pass a ban outlawing wildlife killing contests. And Supervisor Elias, I know you were very involved in that at the time. You may not be aware, so I'm here to tell you that due to your efforts, 3 or 4 other counties have since passed similar resolutions. Coconino County, Yavapai County, Dewey-Humboldt County, and there are 2 pending right now. At the moment, this whole movement of ending predator killing contests, and I will pass this to you, this is from one of 21 contests that take place in Arizona. This one is from Safford.
Yeah, we could, if you set it there and move it around, we can get it on the screen so that everybody can see it in the audience as well.
How should I move it?
If there's a gold spot right underneath there, do you want to
Right.
center it there?
Kind of center it on that gold spot. No, 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 lay it flat. There you go. There you go. Very good.
Time here.
We'll give you a little extra time, don't worry.
This is what's done with the wildlife that are killed in these contests. Currently, there's a resolution, and I gave you all a flyer. On the back of the flyer is the resolution that's currently sitting at the Arizona Game and Fish Commission. There are 5 commissioners. 2 of the commissioners have already indicated they would support this moving on to the legislature. We have a real chance of this moving through. What I'm going to ask today of the board is that you provide a letter of support. I know you've done so much already, but a letter of support would mean a lot sent to the Arizona Game and Fish Commission, and that would help to convince them to move this along to the legislature. There's already bipartisan support for this in the legislature, which is really important. The predator killing contests defy every standard of fair chase in any book or rule book written by sportsmen in any part of this country. The 3 standards of fair chase are: does the animal have a reasonable chance of escape? Number 1. Number 2, is the killing done in a humane manner? Number 3, is the killing wanton? I'll address each of these quickly. Does the animal have a reasonable chance of escape? These contests are held in a very short period of time, usually 1 day. Weapons such as AK-47s and AR-15s are permitted. They have a range of 1,800 to 2,000 feet, which is 5 football fields. No animal can tell if has a sense of smell, sight, or hearing that could possibly warn them that they are being hunted. Number 2, is the killing done in a humane manner? Due to the fact that as many animals are killed as possible in order to win prizes and cash, animals are killed very rapidly. According to Carter Niemeyer, former director of USDA Wildlife Services for Idaho, Montana, and Wyoming, and a personal friend of mine, most of these animals are what they are called gut shot, which means that they are left to die very slowly in the fields until they are picked up at the end of the contest in order to count their corpse as a win. Number 3, is the killing wanton? Wanton is a word that we can identify or define in many ways. However, as you can see, most of these animals are dumped into dumpsters or left on piles right on top of the ground and simply abandoned. Very few of them have usable hides. I mean, if you are a trapper or something like that, the truth is that more than 80% of these animals are totally shot up, or it's at the wrong season, or they're emaciated and their skins and hides cannot be used. An additional thing to remember is that raptors, golden eagles, and American eagles will fly down and eat from these gut piles that are full of lead ammunition. 2 pellets of lead ammunition are enough to kill slowly a large raptor, including condors. So hopefully the public will consider this, and the public opinion, the court of public opinion, will begin to be supportive of ending this kind of blood sport, which is not hunting in any sense of the word. And I appreciate your time today.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time. Our next speaker is going to be Roger Score. Mr. Score, please come forward and give us your name for the record. Please don't be vulgar, and you have 3 minutes to speak.
Okay. Board, my name's Roger Score, and a lot of things have been said. For one thing, like the lady that just got up here by the coyotes, Game and Fish receives all their funding from hunting licenses. It's an 80-20 corporation. 80% of the money they collect goes to them, 20% goes into the general fund. When I grew up in high school, I received $100 for a coyote pelt or a fox pelt in North Dakota. That's how we funded getting through high school. But due to feels good people, they shut down wearing furs. Now the state pays people $5 to cut the ears off and let them lay. Coyotes spread rabies. They kill other game. They eat a lot of birds and other game animals out there. They own the desert. If you do not shoot them, you'll be overpopulated where they're in your backyard. So if someone loses their cat, just remember, we need to get rid of the coyotes. As far as moms standing up, how about some moms standing up to secure our nation, to close that border? You got that rag of a Mexican flag hanging out there. That Mexican government represses their people. They encourage people to invade our nation. How about moms to stop heroin and fentanyl invading our country? We need to fund our sheriff to work with Border Patrol. And the president needs to build the wall or close the border. I don't care about avocados. It won't hurt the U.S. that bad. We have $100 billion per year trade deficit with Mexico. Mexico benefits more than we do from trade. Yet they take and they help people come up here from South America to violate our laws, break our laws, invade our country, poison our children with drugs. And you saw the lady from Totohodum. Sex trafficking is a huge problem on that border. It needs to be shut down. We gotta fund the sheriff. Our safety counts. And the lady that was stopped because of her window tint, well, her and her family have been here for 11 years illegally and never even learned the language. They don't want to be part of our country. They want to bring that country to our country. So,
Please
you know,
complete
as you
your
want to...
comments, Mr. Score, you're almost out of time.
Okay. As you want to tell the story, let's start telling the whole story. That her car wasn't registered. She had no insurance. She was breaking a lot of laws in our country. But just because you're a certain color, a certain sex, or a certain political
You're out of time, sir.
affiliation,
Thank you very much for
I
addressing
want
the
the
board
liberal
today.
privilege you gave them.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate
Only
your time.
liberals get to
Please have
speak
a seat.
extra?
Please have a seat. Our next speaker is going to be Christopher Cole. Mr. Cole, please give us your name for the record, and you have 3 minutes to address the Board of Supervisors.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Christopher Cole. I'm chair of the Pima County Libertarian Party. I want to talk about management. A few years ago, I made a suggestion to, well, Mr. Christie wasn't on the board at the time. Mr. Carroll was. And I said, I don't know how many projects and programs and whatever Pima County has, but you need to prioritize. You need to say, okay, this is priority 1, this is priority 2, this is priority 3, and engage in good management practices so that you're not wasting money on projects that aren't important. Mr. Carroll at the time, I don't remember his exact words, but it was something like, well, I just accept whatever staff tells me in terms of priority. Staff doesn't or shouldn't set priority. The 5 of you set priority. That's your job. Say, this is priority 1, this is priority 2, this is priority 3, all the way down to whatever. You need to do this because otherwise you're wasting my money. You're wasting his money, her money, his money, so forth. Engage in good management practices, and that includes especially setting priorities. Oh, I've got a minute left. A little bit on firearms, if I may. If you take out the gun violence directly responsible from the racist war on drugs, we do better than most of Europe. There's somewhere between 300 and 400 million firearms in this country and probably over 1 trillion rounds of ammunition in private hands. If guns were the problem the autocrats say they are, you'd all be dead. Think it through, please. Thank you.
Did you say we'd all be dead?
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate your comments. Our next speaker is going to be Paul Parisi. Paul, thank you very much for being here today. It's always a pleasure to see you. If you could please give us your name for the record, and you have 3 minutes to address the board.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I'm Paul Parisi. I'm with an organization called For Tucson. We're a nonprofit, and we seek biblical solutions to solve community problems. One biblical principle is if you have judgment without mercy, you'll be treated without mercy, and mercy prevails over judgment. That's James 2:13. That's why For Tucson is involved with criminal justice reform. On April 18th, at Gap Ministries, where our For Tucson offices are, we're going to have a criminal justice forum that's going to have a lot of county people there, as a matter of fact. Nathan Wade, who's a public defender, and Jonathan Mosier, who's the County Chief Trial Counsel, and Pima Prevention Partners Coordinator Manny Mejias are going to be on a panel to discuss criminal justice. You know, in Arizona, we don't have that much mercy when it comes to putting people in jail. Now, I'm a law and order guy. I came here over 50 years ago with the United States Air Force as a police sergeant. And since then, I've been involved in police work. I'm a volunteer with the Oro Valley Police Department for the last 18 years. And I believe in judgment, that if a person commits a crime, that they should be punished for that. But you have to have that level of mercy. We have people spending so much time in prison for nonviolent offenses. And that's taking up jail space for the violent people who should be there for a very, very long time. This event we're having, it's amazing. It's free, and it includes a gourmet dinner. And I'm just not talking, this is Gap Ministries has a culinary school, and all the people that are in this school are just out of prison, and they're learning a trade. So it's a great event. I hope that you come and you invite people. All you have to do is go to either the For Tucson website and look at our event page, or go to For Tucson Government Domain on Facebook. Thank you, and thank you for serving us.
Thank you, sir. Our next speaker is going to be J.P. Salvatierra. Mr. Salvatierra, please come forward. Give us your name for the record, and you have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you for your patience as well today, sir.
Chairman Elias, board members, good morning. I'm Jonathan Salvatierra, native Tucsonan, real estate broker, and election integrity activist residing in San Antonio neighborhood. I come before you to discern whether a current complement board of supervisors can be relied upon to honor their fiduciary obligation to maintain public health, safety, promote prudent economic policies without blatantly disregarding our constituent public threat from discriminatory influence, parasitic lobbyists, and destabilizing executive branch attacks against our demand for a humanitarian, conscience-driven ethos in support of sound policy judgment on displaced refugee issues. Sanctuary is our cultural ethos and moral conduct. It is a slander of our moral interpretude to consider these actions as trumped-up terrorism. The current Trump oligarchy economic policy is rudely replete with continuing attacks against our sovereign neighboring countries in Central and South America. Our failure to obstruct this grab for expropriation of these foreign countries' national resources by outright war or other fabricated pretext is an abomination to all loyal, patriotic Americans. You may not, as to the forbearance of Chairman or Board Member Christie and dropping item 5, it's not dead. And to that, I would say that you may not subordinate your duty to the public by subterfuge of yet another advisory board in hopes of washing your hands clean from disrespecting the public's will, whether it be low-income daycare, welfare, warehousing for profit, creating an artificial caste system for children while inculcating them in the charter school crack logic of diminishing expectations for our youth as a double standard for otherwise expanding our libraries. This Prop 204 is a disgusting, loss for us. We need to consider reinvesting in our libraries for our youth. We can't do this as a for-profit, acquiescence of a disposable income, a fixed income for our schools.
You've exhausted your time, Mr.
Thank you.
Salvatierra.
Thank you very much. I appreciate all your time.
Appreciate it. Next speaker is Drew Heaton. Thank you for being here and being patient today. We appreciate that. And if you'd please give it. Oh, that's okay. If you would please give us your name for the record, and you have 3 minutes to address the Board of Supervisors.
Aloha, ladies and gentlemen. First, thank you, Richard. First, I apologize if my presence here is a discomfort to anybody. I'm sorry that our previous interactions were at times heated. A reluctant activist, my anger surprised even myself. I learned that all of you have good intentions. And with the recent judgments against Monsanto, I hope you learned that your constituents were not ignorant or tinfoil hat wearers. I know that each of you desire to act in the best interest of the public with the best information that you have. And that's why I'm here today, just to share some information. So recently, it has been proposed by a Tucsonan, who is a state representative, to do away with Arizona's non-medical exemptions to vaccination. With reports of measles here, and Rockland County, New York, declaring a state of emergency over 5 active measles cases currently, 150 plus in the last few months. I'm sure some information would come in handy right now. People often refer to the CDC as the only place we should get information. I encourage people to read not just what the CDC advertisements say, but everything. Read everything the CDC says and evaluate the information. Do the math. So I just have a hypothetical question. Would anyone in this room feel very comfortable giving up their liberty under the fear of something, a disease that 72% of people have no symptoms whatsoever. 25% of people have flu-like symptoms that resolve in less than a week. Less than 1% of people have a type of paralysis that may or may not be permanent, and less than 10% of that 1% may have paralysis that involves a respiratory issue. Just think about that for a second. So the talking point, vaccines save lives, falsely gives the impression that it's a 1-to-1 ratio. Antibiotics, water, even guns save lives, but we can all think of circumstances where these statements would be out of context. This statement does not address primary vaccine failure, secondary vaccine failure, vaccine provocation of disease, transmissibility of disease, post-vaccination, and many others I could name, none of which are misinformation, but acknowledged by the CDC, including this. And that's what some of the information you have is. The destruction of herd immunity that protects infants under 1 from measles is a direct result of mass vaccination. I'm confident that public health officials in our community care about children and their suffering. I'm more convinced, however, that the parents who don't vaccinate their children, who've chosen delayed vaccines, or who vaccinate and then their child is injured and stop, love their children more. People remember the Disneyland outbreak, but they haven't read that nearly 40% of those who contracted measles were recent vaccies. Another important documentation.
Ms. Heaton, you've exhausted your time. If you could please finish your comments.
So, thank you. That's very problematic. I hope I have an opportunity to speak with you in person if you have questions about this issue. The answer to my question about that is that every one of you can use your smartphones to go on the CDC right now. 72%, that question hypothetically, that's polio. Do you want to give up your freedom for that less than 10% of 1%? Thank you.
Thank you. Our last speaker is Martha Michaels. Ms. Michaels, if you'd please come forward. Thank you for being patient today. I appreciate that. And if you could give us your name for the record, you have 3 minutes to address the Board of Supervisors.
My name is Martha Michaels. I am here to advocate for the paving of my failed District 1 neighborhood roads. Benjamin Franklin said that there are only 2 certain things in life, death and taxes. I was recently reminded of the certainty of my taxes as my husband and I prepared for our annual trek to the CPA. As we reviewed this year's tax dollars we paid to our governments, and after saying, ouch, I spent some time reflecting on how I felt about the thousands of dollars we have faithfully paid over the 4+ decades we have lived in Tucson. What services have these dollars provided to us? How have these dollars we paid benefited our lives? How will our tax dollars be spent this next fiscal year? How do I feel about all this? I do not resent paying taxes, as they provide direct and indirect benefits to me and to the wider community. I am fortunate to live in a low crime area. I am not, as of today, and never have been a criminal, but I'm happy to pay dollars to support our police and justice systems. I want to live in a safeguarded and just community. As for public education, while I do not have any children in the school system, I am also glad to pay money to support the education of Pima County's children. I do want literate, skilled people in this community. With more time, I could list numerous supported services and programs for which I am grateful, many of which, even though I pay for them, do not directly benefit me personally. However, when it comes to the complicated tax assessments for Pima County road repair and the prioritization and use of these tax dollars, my feelings are not so pleasant. The road repair of my neighborhood has for decades now been excluded from receiving the tax dollars for the repairs it so desperately needs. My neighborhood roads have been at the bottom of the priority list since the 1980s. Now, I know that our complex tax system does not operate the same way as a vending machine. I realize that if I insert X amount of dollars into the tax machine, 10 yards of road repair will not pop out and clunk into the tray below. But at some point, I should have a direct benefit for the dollars I have paid for the direct needs I have. Once again, it's budget planning time, and as of now, it is uncertain how you will choose to prioritize the use of our road repair tax dollars. I urge you to place a generous portion of these dollars into paving the long neglected, failed, and unsafe neighborhood roads in unincorporated Pima County. Although, thankfully, I'm uncertain of when it will occur, I do hope that my Sabino Town and Country Estates neighborhoods will be paved before the certainty of my death. Please pave my roads this next fiscal year. Give me a date certain. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That concludes call to the audience. We're going to take a short break, and when we return, I'm going to ask the board to consider a motion to move into executive session. We have 6 executive sessions today, so it'll be a bit after the break that we have that will be in executive session.
Are we going to take a break, and then can we just make a motion that after the break, can we make a motion now that after the break we go into
I'd be willing to accept that, yeah.
So moved.
Motion is a second that we're going to take a break and then move into executive session. Any discussion, objections? Hearing none, motion carries. We'll return in a little bit, folks. Good morning again, and welcome back to the April 2nd, 2019 meeting of the Pima County Board of Supervisors. We've been in executive session. Council, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Executive session item 8 on the agenda involves Pima County versus Rashid Khan et al. Pima County Superior Court case number C-2017-5482. County Attorney's Office recommends proceeding as discussed in executive session.
Move to proceed as discussed in executive session.
Motion and a second. Discussion, objections, hearing none, motion carries. Council?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, executive session item 9 on the agenda involves Pima County versus Tony Chad Williams. Pima County Superior Court case number C-2018-2054. County Attorney's Office recommends proceeding as discussed in executive session.
Move to proceed as discussed in executive session.
Second.
Excuse me.
Was that a second? Yes. Or a sneeze? Well, bless you. So, yes, we have a motion and a second to approve item 9 as discussed in executive session. Discussion, objections, hearing none, motion carries. We're on to item 10. Council, please.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, executive session item 10 on the agenda involves a proposed settlement and a tax appeal, FHM Partners LLC versus Pima County. Tax court case number TX 2018-001140. Under the terms of the proposed settlement, the full cash value of assessor's parcel number 225-44317D will be reduced from $20,368,902 to $12,666,170 for tax year 2019. County Attorney's Office recommends approval of the proposed settlement.
Move the county attorney's recommendation.
Second. Motion and a second to approve the county attorney's recommendation on item 10. Discussion, objections, hearing none, motion carries. We're on to item 2 on the addendum. Council, please.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, executive session item 2 on the addendum involves another proposed settlement and a tax appeal, BP Swan Investors LLC et al. Versus Pima County, tax court case number TX 2018-001142. Under the terms of the proposed settlement, the full cash value of the property will be reduced from $7,523,312 to $1,586,255 for tax year 2019. That amount represents the purchase price of the property in October 2017. The proposed settlement would also change the class of the property from Class 1 to Class 2. The County Attorney's Office recommends approval of the proposed settlement.
Move the county attorney's recommendation.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the county attorney's recommendation. Discussion, objections, hearing none, motion carries. We're on to item 3. Council, please.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, executive session item 3 on the addendum involves a request to waive a conflict of interest to allow Rusing Lopez and Lazardi P. LLC to represent Union LLC in connection with a property tax appeal. Conflict waivers are up to the discretion of the board.
Move to waive.
Second. Motion and a second. Discussion, objections, hearing none, motion carries. On to item 4 on the addendum. Council, please.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, executive session item 4 on the addendum involves a request to waive a conflict of interest to allow Sanders and Parks PC to represent Malincrot in Pima County v. Purdue Pharma LP et al. Pima County Superior Court case number C-2019-0269. Conflict waivers are in the discretion of the board.
Move to waive.
Motion and a second to waive the conflict. Discussion, objections, hearing none, motion carries. Thank you, Council. We're on to Board of Supervisors sitting as other boards. Flood Control District Board. Item 11 on the regular agenda, page 3.
I'll move the item.
Motion and a second to approve item 11, Somas Incorporated, Amendment Number 1. Discussion, objections, hearing none, motion carries. We're on to item 12.
I'll move the item under riparian habitat mitigation on Old Nogales Highway.
Second.
A motion and a second to approve the riparian habitat mitigation plan for 13599 South Old Nogales Highway. Item 12 on the regular agenda. Discussion, objections, hearing none, motion carries. We're on to item 13. Is a request for electrical easement. Chair will move the item.
Second.
Motion and a second. Discussion, Objections? Hearing none, motion carries. We're on to the consent calendar. Board of Supervisors sitting as the Board of Supervisors. We have item number 1, which presents a potential conflict for Supervisor Miller. Supervisor Miller, I know if you could hobble out of the room for a minute, we'll go ahead and take care of this, and we'll roll you right back in if you want to roll your chair out.
Okay, and then I had some that I wanted to.
Well, you know what? Why don't we take care of the rest of
Yeah.
the addend of the
Agenda.
consent calendar? Thank you, Steve. And then we'll take care of item 1
Okay.
Well, so we'll vote on item 1 separately.
later.
Later.
Yes.
You'll
Supervisor-
divide the question.
Yes.
And so, okay, just procedurally, okay.
No, that's okay. Supervisor Miller, what would you like to separate out?
Item 6, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 16.
10, 11, 12,
13, and
16.
And Mr. Chairman, I'd like to vote on item 26 separately.
Item 6?
26.
26, I'm sorry. Okay. So I'll move the remainder of consent. With
Second.
the exception of item number 1.
And 6, 9, 10, 11, 12, 16,
That's
and
correct.
26.
Those items that have already been called out. Second, thank you. Discussion, objections, hearing none, motion carries. So now we're going to move to those items that we moved out with the exception of item number 1. Item 6, Rio Nuevo Multipurpose Facilities
I'll move the
District
item.
Amendment number 1.
I'll move the item.
Motion and a second. Discussion, Supervisor Miller.
Mr. Chairman, the question I have on this one is that we have been leasing this to the Rio Nuevo Facilities District for 2 years already at a price of $100 a year. And the estimated, the appraised value, which was estimated as $140,000 a year, and now they're coming back wanting to lease it again for us to hold it again for another 2 years at $100 a year. And the market value of that property is $2 million. So my question is, why are we going to continue to hold it? We should either sell it to them or lease it at fair market value.
Anybody have any comments? Not, Ms. Lesher?
Mr. Chairman, Dr. Moffett is here to explain that in greater detail, but I believe that we have been working actively with Rio Nuevo to ensure a highest and best use of the property, and they're looking for a continuation as we move into some negotiations at this point. But Dr. Moffett.
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Miller, the additional caveat as a part of this is that we're able to control the development of that parcel. And so that's a part of the lease agreement and the option agreement. So that's been our purpose, to make sure that it was used appropriately and that we developed it to the highest and best level, potentially.
And I see that you've got the conditions defined here. It's a multi-story office building, 350 parking spaces, and the building must be at least 200,000 square feet. Again, my concern is this a vacant parcel?
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Miller, yes, it is vacant. It used to have the Teresa Lee Clinic on it, and it was cleared, so it's occasionally used as a parking lot, like for the gym show, but that's its condition.
Okay, and if they don't meet this within the next 2 years, I don't know. My concern is, why are we leasing it for $100 a year when we should be getting fair market value for it?
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Miller, essentially this is a joint development approach where we're partnering in this. We feel that the value continues to go up over time, and we've seen that appreciation. So our goal is to jointly work. They can provide some of the incentives that we cannot. We do need more Class A office space downtown. And the decision has been made to partner to try to make sure if we sell it, we don't have control over how that gets developed. So that's been the primary reason behind it.
How does this fit in with, we had another parcel, I think it was 75 East Broadway, that we're gonna develop into a multi-story office building? Is that progressing? Is this this is going to be an additional office building structure for office space?
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Miller, that's correct. This is essentially being, the plan, the project plan is the same between both parcels. 75 East Broadway, we have signed and the board has approved a development plan and a lease with Rio Nuevo for 75 East Broadway. They are finalizing the agreement with the developer. So yes, that will be a Class A office building with retail on the bottom and parking, but very similar to this.
Will we be getting fair market value when this property is developed? Because on Broadway, the county is getting fair market value, and it's the Rio Nuevo district that is subsidizing the actual developer. I can't remember the exact amount, but the developer's getting a reduced rate from what we're leasing it for.
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Miller, on the Cushing Street property, we have the same provision in there where the property will be sold at the time, and this is true of 75 East Broadway also. The property, once the building is complete on 75 East Broadway, once the project is complete, they then do an appraisal on the land, and we sell it at whatever that appraised value is.
Okay.
So we get the benefit of any incremental value growth.
So we're gonna do the same on this property. It's appraised at $2 million, so they will be paying us the $2 million for it.
They will be paying whatever the new appraisal is at the time that we move forward. So it would, in my opinion, be more than $2 million over time.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? Any objections?
I'm going to object. I'm not supportive of the Attorney General and his opinion that the Rio Nuevo district is not subject to the gift clause. And I understand that they are subsidizing these leases until they are finalized, so.
That's fine. Motion passes 4-1. Please turn off your cell phone noises, like now. That's the third time this meeting has been disturbed by a cell phone. We're on to item 9.
I'll move the item.
Motion and a second. Discussion.
Mr. Chairman, the question I had on this one, is this a 5-year or a 3-year? We have conflicting information in the background material. The lease on this, it appears to be 5 years, but there was a memorandum, let me see, from Dr. Garcia that said it was a 3-year lease. Was that just a typo? And then the agenda item report said it was a 5-year lease.
Ms. Lesher?
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Miller, it is a 5-year lease.
5-year lease, okay. Thank you, that's the.
Further
only question.
discussion? Objections? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. We're on to item 10.
Move the item.
Second. Motion and a second. Discussion. Supervisor Miller?
Yes. On this item, you're increasing the contract by $200,000. It was previously $164,000. And it is because it sounds like there's a lot of issues with pumps. And I was curious as to, and you talk about this in your, we followed up with Jackson in your last memorandum that you have 20 of these pumps and that the biosolid content is 16%. You're expecting it to go up to 20%. Is that, first of all, is that a significant amount? Because you're having these failures because of some part on the pump called a stator. And so you're moving over to these other pumps, Schwing pumps, and there's 3 of them out of the 20. We had these problems previously because of the polymers. Is that still an issue with those pumps, or is this going to be ongoing maintenance every year?
Chairman Elias and Supervisor Miller, you should be our spokesman. You got a complicated issue. It was pretty accurate. The swing pumps that we have, the Moino pumps that we have, approximately 20, are different types of Moino pumps throughout our operations, not just one type of pump. They're many, but Moino is the manufacturer.
Okay.
We have 3 of those Moino pumps in the biosolids handling or pumping area. That's where we pump the dewatered or thickened biosolids, which has the consistency of mud. And those pumps struggle. The more solids percentage, or the more concentrated the material is, the harder those pumps have to work. And it's a double-edged sword. We want to get that concentration of solids up because we have to haul those solids a long distance to the agriculture lands for fertilizer. And the more water you haul, the more expensive it is. So trying to find that spot where we can get those pumps to keep pumping the highest possible and minimize the hauling cost is a challenge. So we found a more robust mud pump. It's actually a concrete pump called Swing. We've put one in place. We actually had an old one from eons ago in the laydown yard. We rebuilt it. We tried it out. It seems to work much better. So we're in the process of building a second, or replacing a second Moino pump with a second Swing pump. And that's in process. It just takes a while because it's not just buy a different pump. You have to modify the piping and the other infrastructure there. But that will hopefully reduce that maintenance cost on those 3 Moino pumps that are in a challenged area pumping mud.
So it's really just those 3 that have caused this problem, and you're replacing?
All of the pumps we have to do regular maintenance on,
Right.
but those 3 have been the most problemsome because of the environment that they work in.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. We're on to item 11, excuse me.
I'll move the item.
Second, motion and a second to approve item 11. Discussion, Supervisor Miller.
Mr. Chairman, I guess the question I had on this one is for, let's see, are these for more pumps, number 11? Let me just take a quick here. Oh, this is for the carbon.
Right.
So this is an ongoing, you do this every year, the carbon?
Yeah, Chairman Elias and Supervisor Miller, carbon is one of our critical materials used in fighting odors in the wastewater system. We have numerous granulated activated carbon vessels throughout conveyance and treatment, and the carbon gets used up, and you replace it with new carbon on a regular basis.
And you have this for 1.2 million with 4 renewals of 1.2 million a year. What was the amount of the last contract? It looks like you're adding new suppliers because you said you're having a little bit of a hard time getting this.
Yeah, I think our carbon use has been fairly consistent over time. Potentially Mary Jo can.
I don't
know
think
if you
that
were
was
Mary
Supervisor Miller's question. The question is whether you're adding additional providers because you've been unable to meet the need that you currently have.
Thank you, Supervisor Elias. Yes, we do have some delivery issues with our last contract. Carbon got very challenging to get. Most of it comes from Asia, and there's also some tariff issues that were placed on that carbon, so it got more expensive. And due to the problems with delivery, we decided to go with a primary and a secondary provider, so we have a backup in case the first one cannot deliver.
How much has the price gone up with the tariffs? Because you indicated that the international tariffs were causing an increase. I guess, what was the amount of the last contract?
I believe it was about 20%.
So it's a 20% increase, this contract, okay. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. We're on to item 12.
I'll move the item.
Second. Motion and a second. Discussion. Supervisor Miller.
Yes, and on this one, this is again for more pumps. And you got your master agreement here for 1 year of $588,000, and then 4 1-year renewals. That brings it up to about $3 million. The increase, I got information, I guess it came from you, that it was due to the conveyance that you had to add several larger pumps or large pumps in this area. And then there was another pump. There was a treatment just recently bought a $90,000 pump for this effort. So the question is, are these new pumps? Are they replacing old pumps? I guess, why are we continuing to buy all these pumps?
Chairman Elias and Supervisor Miller, the flight type pump is a submersible pump, which we also have numerous sizes of pumps in different pump stations and different submerged environments and tanks around the infrastructure. So the answer to your question is yes, this is both new replacement and repair parts for existing pumps. It's a combination of both, and we do have some additional pump stations that we've picked up. In fact, that's an addendum item, another pump station we're picking up, and it's making sure we have a spare pump should we need it.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Additional discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. We're on to item 13.
Move the item.
Second. Motion and a second. Discussion. Supervisor Miller.
Mr. Chairman, again, this question is for Jackson. This master agreement is for an initial term of $1.3 million and then 4 $1.3 million renewals over each year. You sent over some information on your chemical cost budget requests, and on the hypochlorite, which is what this is for, that information said it was $629,524. And the contract is for $1.3 million. I'm just curious why there's such a disparity there.
Chairman Elias and Supervisor Miller, I sent a follow-up email that information was incorrect. The actual hypochlorite is about 1.1 million. That's what it's been for the past number of years, a fairly consistent amount of usage and price. So that first email I followed up with, so my apologies for that first one.
Oh, okay, so the first numbers were incorrect. Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. We're on to item 16. Chair will move the item.
Second.
Motion and a second. Discussion. Supervisor Miller.
Okay, this is the pilot program for housing individuals who have been in prison. It's concerning to me because it's being funded out of the general fund. One question is, why aren't we applying for a grant, or assuming there'll be grants available, since the president led this criminal justice reform and wants to get more people out of prison? So why wouldn't we be pursuing a grant versus funding this out of the general fund?
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Miller, we have been pursuing any variety of grants regarding the entire Pay for Success and permanent supportive housing issue. This is an extension of the MacArthur grant, and some of the funding we've received, or the second round of funding, in about $3 million of grants. We will continue to actively explore the possibility of additional grants. This $1.5 million out of general fund is because we believe ultimately it will significantly decrease the costs that are expended by the general fund as we look at not only booking rates, building new jails, and then the daily rate within the jail itself, in addition to just the human costs that are associated with emergency room visits and the behavioral health component. When we began the work in 2017 with the Sorensen Institute, we studied how we might look at a pay-for-success model. And after a considerable look at that, and that model allows us to reward the recipients of grants to make sure that there's actually a financial benefit to the people of Pima County should there be a success within the program. After significant review, we realized that what we were gaining through that model was simply, while it gave us a lot of background experience on the program, it was simply a funding mechanism that was going to end up costing us more by the time we provided additional funding to external partners. So the reason that this one component is funded out of general fund at this point is to immediately begin to decrease other costs in the general fund ultimately. But it does not mean that we will in any way slow down our desire to supplement this program with grant dollars.
Okay, and what, the criminal justice reform and in using this program, I guess what areas, will it be the county attorney budget, the sheriff's department budget for corrections that we're going to expect to see these items decrease?
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Miller, I believe you see those kinds of cuts across the board in that we look at, if you look at the behavioral health side of the house or the medical health side, we are going to be seeing, as I mentioned, decreases in emergency room calls and the number of individuals accessing the emergency rooms, medical care, behavioral health care. Over the past several years, the reason that we really began to look in significant depth at the pay-for-success model and the permanent supportive housing model was simply to ensure we didn't have to build additional jail capacity and additional facilities. So I think we're looking at both the cost avoidance of expanded costs in the future and additional cost benefits. I'm happy to follow up with you with the delineation between both, I think, the defense side, the prosecution side, the health side, some of our external partners, excuse me, and what it is we're looking at overall in cost savings. We're happy to follow up with greater detail with that.
Okay. And I don't recall this ever coming to the board before. Has this ever been? It has not been before the board. So there was a steering committee formed, and then the county committed $1.5 million. I believe the city of Tucson committed some vouchers for housing. Do you know the value of that?
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Miller, I do not know the dollar value of that. We're happy to get that for you. What that does is provide the adequate reimbursement for those individuals who will be using those beds within the facility. So while I can't tell you that exact number, I'm happy to get it for you. It provides for the cost neutrality of the use of the facility.
And then you talk about that we've contracted, Pima County's already contracted with 2 independent third-party consultants, the RAND Corporation and the Corporation for Supportive Housing. They weren't identified in this contract, the amount that we're paying them, the third party.
Mr. Chair, Supervisor Miller, I can get you those numbers. Those are being funded in part through the MacArthur Foundation grants and the other grants that are coming through the Criminal Justice Reform Unit.
So that's 100% funded with grants?
I believe that to be true, Supervisor Miller. We can follow up with that dollar if that is incorrect. But that's been the purpose of the MacArthur grant and the Criminal Justice Reform Unit was to ensure that we have the that we are providing for a constant review loop and evaluation component with the program to ensure that we are in fact getting the results that we have desired.
And then there's also another cost that was identified was the roles and responsibilities of a program manager that is being supplied by Pima County. Who is that program manager and how much is that going to cost?
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Miller, I do not have that. I'm happy to get that back to you. Those are also individuals that are supported. They are budgeted positions that you have approved within the current budget and will be before you again as we move into budget adoption for the new fiscal year. But the name and the salary and full load benefits, we will follow up with you.
And will that be funded out of this program or will that be funded with grant funds?
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Miller, that position comes through the general fund. Okay. And will be proposed in the budget.
Will that be in addition to this 1.5 million?
It is not in addition, no ma'am.
So it's part of this?
Mr. Chairman, yes.
And then Chuck sent a memo that stated that there could be individuals housed in here. It could not be 100% illegal aliens, undocumented. He says it cannot be that, but it could be 95% undocumented individuals living in the household.
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Miller, I'm not aware of that component of this program. Our concern has been of individuals, at the bottom line, that are coming into the system, that are going to be housed in the jail, and that we find a way for those individuals who are being released from the jail to move into a permanent supportive housing position, in the hopes that what it has been doing historically is that those individuals simply provide additional low-level crimes so in order to come back immediately into the jail. So the focus is on making sure that those individuals are not we decrease the recidivism and are moving people out of the jails, and you're not paying for them at that point. The concern of whether the citizenship and not has not been that focus. You've got the
Okay,
memos.
because, yeah, and that's what his memorandum said. It says determining program eligibility, the following 3 criteria, are absolute grounds for denial of assistance. And it says households where 100% of the members do not have eligible immigration status. So anything below 100%, 99%, living in the household. So it could be for undocumented.
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor
That's a
Miller.
stretch.
No,
Yeah,
it
says right here.
if there is someone within the family, that would not be the individual with whom we are working to provide the permanent supportive housing. So while we're looking at whether or not the entire family may be citizens or not, what we're looking at is the individual. Is it possible that there are members in an extended family that do not meet the same criteria? Potentially, those are not the individuals. Then how we are reviewing them that would be moving, using the city vouchers and using our vouchers to be placed within the facility.
Thank you.
You're using
Thank you.
HUD vouchers for Section 8 or low-rent public housing. You cannot house people who are undocumented, so that's irrelevant.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Any objections?
I object.
One objection noted for Supervisor Miller. We're on to item 26.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to ask that we continue this item to our next meeting, which I believe is April 16th.
Right.
And the reason I'm asking for the continuance is that I'm concerned why we are expanding the list. The individuals, Mr. Blue and then Ms. Felix, I have no problems with. My concern is, why do we need to expand the list? What is the current caseload, particularly as it relates to the consolidated justice courts? So why are we doing this? What's driving this? Again, as we look at criminal justice reform and the costs to the system, what is causing this expansion? And historically, where have we been in terms of caseloads for all those justices?
So your motion is to continue this item until the next meeting.
And to get that so we can have that information before voting on it.
Motion and a second. Discussion? Objections? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. We're back on item 1 on consent calendar. Supervisor Miller needs to remove herself from the room.
That's good enough.
And
Don't go down. It's okay, Ally. Don't do another fall.
I'll go ahead and move the item.
Second.
Motion and a second. Discussion? Objections? Hearing none, motion carries. We're back on to the regular agenda. Item 15. Council, please.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I just wanted to note for the board that this was an item.
Is your microphone on?
I'm sorry, it says it's on.
Oh, just
Okay.
pull it a little closer then so that I can hear you.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
This is an item in which the assessor has expressed in his review that the property is not entitled to the exemption because the ownership of the property is not established.
Okay. You have an opinion on that?
Well, Mr. Chairman, it's an issue we've discussed before, that there's not a clear legal answer with respect to these statutes about who has authority to determine the exemption. And I just mentioned that to you because it differs from the other tax items that are on in which the assessor has agreed.
No problem. Thank you, sir. It's a pleasure of the board.
I'll move the item.
Motion and a second. Discussion. Objections?
I object.
One objection noted for Supervisor Miller. We're on to item 16, petitions for redemption of property tax exemption waiver.
I'll move the item.
Motion and a second. Discussion. Objections? Hearing none. Motion carries. We're on to development services, appointing the hearing officers and hearing administrators. Resolution 2019-22.
I'll move the item.
Motion and a second. Discussion. Objections? Hearing none. Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, on items 18, 19, and 20, their final plat with assurances. If nobody wishes to divide the question, I'll move the items.
Motion and a second to move 18, 19, and 20. Discussion. Objections? Hearing none. Motion carries. I'm going to move item 21.
Second.
Motion and a second. Discussion. Objections? Hearing none. Motion carries. We're on to item 22, unfinished business.
Move the item.
Motion and a second. I would note that there are some folks that are left off the table with this discussion of short-term disability. Chuck has asked both the union and folks from Human Resources to work on this item for the next 120 days. I think it's critical that we find some kind of resolution to this before we continue. So we have a motion and a second. Discussion.
Mr. Chairman,
Supervisor Miller?
so you're not going to continue this for the next 120 days?
No. I
Okay.
think we need to approve it now.
Okay.
That's my desire, but it's up to the board, of course.
Okay, I have a couple questions on this one. My understanding is that this is going to be funded out of the internal service fund for the Health Benefit Trust Fund.
That's correct.
And the question is, number one is, what is the balance in there? And number two is, why do we have a balance in there?
Mr.
Well,
Burke.
there's a lot of reasons for that, but Tom, why don't you answer that question, please?
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor
I'm
Mil-
sorry, Mr. Burke, I shouldn't be so casual with you, sir.
It's quite all right. Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Miller, as of June 30, the balance in the Health Benefits Trust Fund was $35.4 million. We started the self-insurance program about 6.5 years ago. We originally based it on our experience when we were working with the fully insured plan before, so we estimated what our cost would be. Over the last 5 years, we've come in consistently under our expectations for the cost to the county. We've had a ramp up of our wellness program, which seems to be helping quite a bit, having us come in with less costs, and we rebid just recently and got much lower pharmaceutical costs. So over the last 6 years, each year we've been coming in under the expectations, and so that built up the fund.
Why wouldn't we lower the premiums for the employees versus using this overage in the fund for this?
Mr. Chairman,
effort?
Supervisor Miller, over the last 3 years, we have lowered the premiums. A large number of the employees pay zero right now, so we couldn't lower their premiums significantly. This is when we look at what the purpose of the fund is to try to provide affordable benefits to the employees. And this one, we have quite a few employees that currently pay for their own short-term disability because that's not provided by the state. So, and we have the catastrophic leave bank, but that only covers about a quarter of the employees. So that we at the Health Benefits Trust Advisory Board thought this would be a good benefit for the county to offer, and there is funds available without any impact to the current budgets.
I guess the question is, it looks like right now you're predicting it's going to cost $1.7 million per year And with the 4-year renewals, we're going to end up about 8.5 million. The question is, once you start providing this benefit to the employees free of charge, what happens when we have the fund goes way down? How are we going to fund it at that point? That's the concern, is that we're adding a new benefit and we're not charging the employees anything for it. Do we become obligated at that point to continue providing it, even if it's going to cause us to deplete this balance in there?
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Miller, the health benefits that the board provides are essentially at the discretion of the board. This particular benefit, generally whenever you give a benefit to employees, it is difficult to retract it, but it is not impossible to do so. Our plan was originally to go for 2 or 3 years with an outside insurance firm to provide the benefits. We think that we could actually handle it internally and save funds, but we wanted to have the experience of several years under our belt before we would recommend that.
Okay, I guess the concern is that we're going to obligate ourselves to providing this benefit forever, and that we may not always have this surplus in that fund, in that self-insurance fund. That is a big concern to me, and I know in the past we had an issue with, I believe it was benefits that were given to the sheriff's deputies, and we joined the state in a lawsuit, and we ended up paying in the end because we removed benefits. I don't believe it was under these same type of circumstances, but that's a concern to me, that once we start offering this as a benefit for free, that we'll always have to provide it.
I would just remind the good supervisor that a benefit is something that's part of a reciprocal relationship between an employer and the employee, and they've earned that. It's not a matter of them having to pay for it, but rather something that they've earned during the course of their employment.
Well, what I'm looking at is reality, which is
I
in
am
the
too.
private sector, people have to pay for this benefit. You don't get it for free. And if we keep tacking on benefits, eventually the private sector who funds us is not going to be able to continue paying for this.
Well, once more, I would remind you that all those people in the private sector have different rules that they employ for their employees and the benefits that they offer.
Of
And some
course.
people feel that this is the type of employment benefit that is in fact important to people in their lives. I stand together with those folks and don't have a problem with it.
It is an important benefit, but in the private sector, people have to pay for it out of their own pocket. It's not provided for free, and I'm afraid here we're obligating ourselves to something that may become a problem down the road.
My father was a private employer for more than 50 years, and he provided this type of benefit without cost to his employees.
Well, I'd like to say the majority of employers out there do not, so.
He ran a
Thank
union
you.
shop, so I guess that made it a little different. Very good. Any further discussion? Supervisor Christie.
Question, Mr. Burke, has there been any indication that there's been abuses within this program and within this benefit?
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Christie, in regards to the short-term disability, we don't offer that to all the employees. It's only for the select couple, about 400 or 500, who purchase their own plans through one of the 2 companies we contract with.
And would this include the CAT plan?
Well, this would be to replace the catastrophic leave plan. I don't believe there has been abuses of that plan. The problem with it is that there's been greater use than we anticipated from the contributions of sick leave that we got from employees. So as a result, each year we have a contribution of 10 or 12,000 hours of leave, but we're using 14 or 15,000 hours of leave. So the plan right now has about, I believe it's this current pay period will actually run out of hours. So anybody on that plan won't have any benefit within a month or so.
Has there been any indication that there's been others other than the employee being having access to this plan or using this plan other than the employee?
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Christie, no.
Okay. Any other discussion? Any objections?
I object.
One objection noted for Supervisor Miller. We're on to item 20. Oh, the item passes 4-1. Real property, item 23, abandonment by sale, resolution 2019-23.
Mr. Chairman,
Supervisor Miller.
if no one wishes to speak on this item, I move to close the public hearing and approve the rezoning closure C09.
No, this is abandonment by sale.
Oh, am I on the wrong item?
Yes.
Oh, I was looking at 25, sorry.
Mr. Chairman, on that item, item 23 and resolution 2019-23, I'll move the item.
Second, including resolution
Right.
2019-23. Discussion, objections, hearing none, motion carries. We're on to hearings now, franchises, licenses, and permits. Items 24, Chair will move the item and close public hearing.
Second.
Motion and a second, discussion, objections, hearing none, motion carries. Item 25, Development Services, hearing, rezoning closure, case number C09-05-24, Catalano et al.
Mr. Chairman, if no one wishes to speak on this item, I move to close the public hearing and approve item C09-05-24.
Motion, oh, we have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to close the public hearing and approve item 25, case number C09-05-24. Discussion, objections, hearing none, motion carries. We're on to the addendum. We're on page 2, item 6.
Mr. Chairman, I will move the item for the petition for relief of taxes. Ginger Don, who represents the Arivaca Christian Church, has submitted documentation that they are a nonprofit group, so I will move the item.
Just item 6.
Just item 6.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. I'm the second to approve item 6. Discussion, objections, hearing none, motion carries. We're on to item 7.
I'll move the item.
Second. Motion and a second. Discussion, objections, hearing none, motion carries. We're on to item 8. Regional Wastewater Reclamation, Salida del Sol Homeowners Association, and Promontory 2 at Sunrise Homeowners Association Incorporated.
Move the item.
Second.
Motion and a second. Discussion, objections. Hearing none, motion carries. Chair will move the remainder of the addendum if it's agreeable to everybody.
Second. Oh, you just second.
We already have a second. Thank you. Discussion, objections, hearing none, motion carries. That concludes our business of the day. Hearing no objections, this meeting is